from right here in the ancient Karam Swamp. Apologies, listeners, our text line is still down for now, so we just look forward to your comments and feedback after the broadcast. Reach us on Instagram at Radio Architecture. Leave comments, send us your DMs. We'd love to keep in touch. My guest and conversation partner this evening is Fiona Dunin. She established FMD Architects in 2005 with a focus on design-intensive projects of varying scales and types. Fiona merges the two disciplines of interior design and architecture. Her experience is diverse, with a range of projects including residential, major retail, and institutional projects over the last 30 years. The detailed nature of her work, coupled with extensive research into materials and product development, is reflected in the rich interiors and architecture produced. Welcome to the program, Fiona.
Thank you very much.
That was a really short, efficient bio. I do love when those come up, because it leaves us so much to jump into and so much to unpack. And even that bio, I think, didn't mention that you run a practice between Victoria and Tasmania.
Yeah, well, the majority of the work is in Victoria, but we're actually pretty diverse. We did a really significant house in Tasmania, which really launched our projects down there. So we've got 2 or 3 projects on the go at the moment down there. But we're also looking at work in South Australia. We've done some work in Byron Bay recently. Also projects on the go in Italy. So we're all over the place.
Can you say you're officially scaling to be an international practice?
Yes, definitely. I want to be an international architect.
How big's your team?
It's actually quite small. We're 5 people at the moment. And sometimes we get up to about 8, but I like to keep it pretty small. We were bigger and then I've sort of scaled it back.
Wow.
Yeah, I just enjoy it because I like to be all over every single project as a slight control freak.
We'll jump into that process and some of the work of the practice further in the conversation. But I want to go back to the very beginning.
Sure.
And there's one question I love to ask all my guests, and that is, what's your early...
Which was designed by McGlashan Everest.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember this amazing bathroom and the amazing entry and stair, and just, it was a great 70s house, and
Lots of glass.
Lots of glass and an indoor sort of garden in the entry stairwell and all that stuff, and like crazy hands that hold your soap in the bathroom and all that, fantastic 70s stuff. So that's probably my first experience, I'd say, of architecture. But I also grew up in Canberra, so we had some pretty amazing buildings there, and I would go to the National Gallery nearly every weekend with my mum, and really had zero appreciation of how good it was until I started actually studying architecture.
Wow. Do you have photos of the McGlashan Everest house?
Yeah, I've got the drawings.
Incredible. We will hope that you'll share them with us, and we'll put them in the follow-up post on Instagram for our listeners.
I'll have to see if Mum's got some photos, like family photos in the house, so that'd be pretty funny.
That would be a real treat. And especially there is a McGlashan Everest, a home, a mid-century one just down the road from where we're broadcasting here in Aspendale.
Oh, awesome.
Local to the Long Beach, so really amazing part of Australian and Victorian architectural history.
Yeah, fantastic.
Canberra, our national capital, really inspiring place, I think, to grow up and see the importance of civic architecture. But had you known any architects? Did you know that was a career option?
No, had zero interest in architecture until much later on, until I was in Melbourne. And so I really didn't appreciate it at all and didn't find it a particularly inspiring place, to be honest, to grow up.
Oh, really?
No. And so I think it was only, I fell into design much later on.
How did that happen?
So my major focus at school was languages. So I'd been studying Japanese and French. I'm sort of fluent in French from sort of 10 years old, and I was living in France at sort of 16 and made to come home to do year 11 and 12. And I came back to year 11 sort of a few weeks late, and was really sort of planning to do international law and move into foreign affairs. And I went to school to enrol and was meant to do economics and law and, maths and blah, blah, blah. And economics was full. And so the only things that were left were art or design. And I was like, ugh.
Couldn't get a more polar opposite, could you?
And so I went, oh, I'll do design, which I actually loved because my mum taught fashion design and I loved designing my own clothes and making my own clothes and things. So I had a creative spark, but just didn't really know about it or appreciate it. So I did in design, and that sort of covered interior design and industrial design and graphic design, and I absolutely fell in love with it and went, this is so, I love it. And so then I applied to do industrial design and interior design at the end of year 12, much to my parents' horror, because I was meant to do law and I changed my mind, and got into interior design at RMIT, and that's sort of where it started. So that's where the whole interest in architecture and interior design started.
And did you study interiors first and then shift into the architecture program?
Yeah, so I studied interior design, and then I went and worked for a large sort of corporate interior design firm called Gaia Design. They did a lot of retail and corporate fit outs and things like that, and I loved it. And then I moved with one of the girls there to Daryl Jackson, and she was heading up the interiors team there. So, and her name was Jane Mackay. And so then I said, please, can I come with you? And so she took me with her, and we were sort of forming the interiors department at Daryl Jackson. And Daryl was just an amazing mentor and really inspirational, and I couldn't believe the architecture he was producing. And after a year, I was like, I really want to study architecture now and take over the world. And so that's what I did, and I kept working for him while I was studying, and yeah, it was a really lovely balance between the two. Yeah.
Another firm, absolutely part of Australian architectural history.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson he taught you?
I would look. I think he had an absolute incredible passion of architecture and engineering and honesty with the architecture. So I would say it would be that sort of be honest with about your architecture, and I couldn't say there's a very clear lesson about it, but definitely that, just watching him work. And we were doing some amazing things, and I was doing this, suspended stair in this glass atrium one day over 5 stories, and he came down and sat down next to me and worked out the cable suspension system in about 5 minutes, which I was spending days trying to work out. So he's an incredible architect.
I think we better unpack what honesty means for our listeners in architecture. And for many, that's about materials. It's about not using anything that's fake, not putting up a fake facade or a fake pastiche.
Yeah, and I think it's also honest about your approach. I think there's that. And in Daryl's terms, it's about being honest with the building and expressing all the sort of functional elements and the structure. He comes from what's called a brutalist background, which is all about exposing the structure and the services of the building. And so very much about being honest that way, whereas I didn't necessarily take that all on board, because I can be very decorative at the same time. So
there's no harm in decoration.
No, totally, I agree. So I think it's being aware of your particular design approach.
How would yours differ?
Mine is definitely much more decorative, and I love telling stories through embellishment. But that embellishment can come in very interesting ways. It's not necessarily lots of sort of frills and fancy cornices and things like that. It can be stories that are embedded in the architecture. A great example of that would be like our house. Our most well-known house is a house down in Tasmania called Coopworth, which is a sheep farm. And in that one, we used the wool from the sheep and put it in the ceiling over the dining area, and I call that my wool fresco, and it's all exposed under polycarbonate sheets, but it's quite decorative. So it's actually telling the story about where we are, what we're doing in that house, and the sheep are sitting outside, and the wool is up on the ceiling that you can see.
I love that.
Yeah. So
do the clients think you were mad when you proposed it, or they were excited?
Luckily, I'd done a couple of houses for them before, so they were used to my mad ideas, but this one, everyone was saying, and luckily because they had done 2 houses, when they asked, how are you going to put that together? And I just said, I don't know, but we'll work it out on the way. And they were very trusting of the process. And we also had an amazing builder so that we could sit down and really nut out how to do it, because it sounds kind of simple, but there's a whole lot of things about packing wool behind a plastic sheet that I didn't think about, such as vermin or insects getting in there, the smell of it, sealing it off, all this kind of stuff. And also gravity, like how to keep it in there and it's all going to sink and compact, and how do we keep it looking good and even the whole way.
And change over time. What if they have to replace the wool at some point?
Well, hopefully not, because it's sealed in there. So
It might be like in the tombs of the pharaohs where they found
that's right.
they found wools and furs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what they'll find there in 200 years' time?
Any number of relics like that. Trust is just so important to these relationships and these clients.
Yes, absolutely. I always talk about with my client, the first thing I talk about is we have to like each other. That's the first thing. And, you know, you're meeting people that you may have never met before. They've never met you. And to me, the most important thing is we're going to spend a couple of years together getting to know each other, and I'm going to get to know them very well and very intimately. And I have to like them and they have to like me. And if you don't have that straight away, it's not going to work. And the other layer of trust is with the builder. So I also talk about the importance of the love triangle. So we've all, between the client, me and the builder, we have to love what each other does and their role in the project.
Otherwise, you're just not going to have a great outcome, right?
You are not going to have a great outcome. If one of those doesn't work, it really isn't the best outcome.
And it's not worth it. It's just not worth anybody's energy because it's such a long time to bring a building into existence. I think I regularly return to this point in the program that folks aren't just buying a drawing. The client isn't just buying a house to live in or a product at the end. They're actually buying a couple of years of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not just a brand. It's a really, and particularly ours, I talk about that we're sort of really embedding the stories of the place and the people and the history of the site and layering that all up and really creating a story for our clients. And we do these collages along the way for each project that talk about that story, and they sort of start at the beginning, but these collages evolve throughout the project and we hand them over at the end of the project. So that sort of tells the visual story of the process and the site and them and everything in it as well. So
a physical paper collage.
Yeah. Well, it's not cut out by hand. It's on the computer.
Yeah,
it's a digital collage, but it's something, especially when we've got a really strong concept, we really love building those up.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that Elsie use collage as a design tool. So absolutely picking up all those details that you're putting down and how amazing for listeners. Do you share some of these online? Are we able to share any of these collages?
They are on our website, so you'll see on each project. They're particularly probably the ones over the last 10 years is where we really started developing those collages in more detail. So, they're on the website. The first thing on the projects where we have them, it's on the website.
And it gets to this moment of art becoming the process, and the really creative work is really integral to the process.
Oh, absolutely. And I love exploring that relationship between art and architecture. And I actually did a series of videos back in just pre-COVID, and we launched them during COVID, these interviews between sort of artists that had really strong relationships with architects or architecture. And Simon, who you interviewed last week, his wife Ty is on that show. And we sort of talked to her about the influence of architecture that had on her when they were building their house and all sorts of things. So I love that sort of overlay and that sort of symbiosis between the two.
Do you think your background in interiors gives you a further enhanced appreciation for art?
I think, well, maybe for design, I don't necessarily think that has further appreciation for art. I actually find art a really strong inspiration for the architecture. And I love going to sort of the Venice Biennale or various amazing galleries around the world and finding inspiration in art for the architecture. But obviously that's also imbued in the interiors as well, because whatever the concept is for the initial sort of architectural concept, the thing with my interiors is I like to bring that concept all the way through into the fine detail of the interiors as well. So, and even before when I worked for other architects such as John Wardle, we always talked about that. So he'd sort of be developing the main concept and with sort of the core architecture design team there, and then I'd be sort of bringing working from that concept design and bringing it through into the interiors from a very early stage, which is quite different from a lot of other firms where the interiors team is not brought in until the architecture is more developed. So I love that, having that opportunity to, as an interior designer, to work on things in concept phase with the architects.
Personally, I feel it's one holistic system. You can't separate the interiors from the architecture. It's all the architecture.
Yeah. But it is interesting, though, having worked in larger practice, that how the interiors team can be quite a separate entity, and they're not even necessarily sitting together, which was a big thing for me. It was like... when I was at Wardles, for instance, I really wanted to ensure that the interiors were sitting in amongst the architects so that everyone is working together and it's not a separate entity. To me, that was really important, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. So often they are in a separate room or a separate building even, or a separate floor level or something like that in the larger practices.
How do you feel that impacts the outcome?
I think it's much better to have... I think it's a better... learning outcome for everyone involved if they're working together on it and exposed to things, so the interiors team can see the building being developed even if they're not involved yet, but you can see it on the computer next to you or something like that, and you could even have some suggestions straight away about, you could do something amazing like this with interiors, or maybe the space isn't the right size, because often you'll get it on your drawing board when it's in design development, which is sort of...
It's a bit late.
It's a bit late, and you go, that bathroom's a bit small, or that bedroom's a bit large, or whatever. So that's kind of why I went back to study architecture, because I just found that the interiors were sort of maybe involved a bit late and weren't necessarily getting all the opportunities to have an influence early on. So if you can't beat them, join them.
And create your niche, right? And carve out your specialty, carve out your interest.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily thought about that strategically. It was more working on very large projects. I just wanted to be able to have more say in what was being produced at an earlier stage. Mm-hmm. So, and I didn't necessarily understand all the decisions that the architect had made. So going back and studying architecture, then I could understand more about what they did and why they did it, and then able to, have more say and influence.
There's often this moment in the students' education, this aha moment almost, when they realise, right, that's what architecture is, or this is what they want from me and this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
Do you remember such an experience for yourself?
I think it's interesting studying architecture. I struggle, say, with urban design, which is how architecture sits within a sort of in the whole urban realm and involves roads and parks and, where do you put the major buildings? And that one I struggled with. And it also, which helped me understand interior design's position. It may sound strange, but understanding that architecture is a really diverse thing. It's not just one building. It actually it affects every aspect of your daily life, moving from your house to your workplace to the football field outside over here or something like that. So understanding how that affects you, then it helps you understand how interiors, when you move into those buildings, can impact you. So architecture is not just walls, floors, ceilings. It's an entire city. I don't know how to explain it.
It's everything,
it's
really.
It's everything, yeah. And then you think a lot more about how it relates to the landscape. So then it just bleeds out into everything.
What's something that you feel in your practice you keep sharing with your clients or reminding your clients of that completely blows their mind about architecture design, that it's perhaps it's a concept that you hold closely, that you keep repeating back to them, and it really blows their mind open?
I think the most important thing that I tell them is I'll give them something that they hadn't thought of. And that's what they've come to me for. That's what they're paying me for, is whereas if they all come to me with preconceived ideas of what they're going to do on their house or on their interiors or whatever it is, and I really like to throw that up in the air, I will sketch out what that is in their brain, but then I will give them a whole lot of other different ideas. And I think that's really important, is to just come with an open mind, and then hopefully we find something that will surprise you and delight you. So that's really important.
There's no point going to an architect if you know the answer.
Well, it's no fun.
No.
And I think it has to be fun. And you have to learn, they have to learn something, and we have to learn something as well on every single project. So that's really important.
What's your big red flags when you're thinking about the go or no-go decision with a client?
As in whether you want to go with their client?
Yeah. Go with the project.
I'm pretty open, to be honest, and I'm a fairly open person. I very rarely say no to a project, to be honest. Generally, they've come to me through word of mouth or they've seen my work, so they're generally pretty open and trusting. If we can normally nut it out, and I normally say yes to a project, but then if we start working through concept design and seeing that they're just not understanding it, they usually, we both sort of close the books fairly quickly. So you haven't gone too far down the track, but that rarely happens. And that's usually the main issue would be, and actually one of my clients wrote this in an interview, is don't micromanage the architect. They know what they're doing. So if you see that sort of level of micromanagement, you've got to hit it on the head fairly early, or just say, we're not for you. That's probably the biggest one, is micromanagement, because we are, experts in what we do.
Yes, absolute professionals. That takes a very long time to
Yeah.
study, register, become accredited,
Yeah.
become legally entrusted with bringing something into an existence that wasn't real before.
Absolutely.
And then let alone to set up a business. So I actually really want to ask, what was that moment for you of working on these amazing prestigious practices, being really even on the frontiers of new emerging interior design departments, being so involved? What was that impetus to start your own firm, and that moment that you knew you had to jump out there and take a leap?
Yeah, it was funny. I'd never really thought about doing that. And my parents had sort of always worked, for the government, or my mum in schools and stuff, so I hadn't had that sort of business impetus. However, my partner had restaurants, so I was used to seeing someone running their own businesses. But at the same time, I was really enjoying just working for other architects, and they were making all the big decisions and I was just implementing what they wanted done. And then I just got to a point where it was like, actually, I don't want anyone else to tell me what to do anymore. I want to make the decisions, and that's what it was. And then a great opportunity came along with a house down in Lorne, where the client wanted me to design a house for them. I just had my daughter, so I wasn't really working that much, just sort of part-time. And I went, actually, I could take this on. This is probably what I need. And I wasn't already, because I was only working part-time, wasn't too worried about how much money I was going to earn, because I wasn't earning a lot. So it was a good opportunity to take a risk and take it on. So I did, and that was the start of it. And it was quite funny, because when I was working with a quantity surveyor, who is our consultant who prices up our building designs, I sent it off to him to price up, and he goes, "Oh, so you're starting your own business?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I hope you're not starting just with this one project." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he went, "Oh gosh, no, that's not going to go well." And the job did actually fall over.
Oh no.
But that's okay. By then I'd had other jobs sort of starting up as well. So
wow. And was it a good time in the market as well? Was it a bit of a perfect storm of opportunity and availability?
it wasn't bad. So yeah, it was a reasonably good time to start a practice, and I wasn't really trying to grow very fast. I didn't want to do too much work because I had a young baby. So it was all about just sort of being able to stay at home and be flexible. But as soon as I did start my own practice, what was incredible was the amount of architects that referred work to me. So my greatest support were other architects around me who encouraged me and gave me all the work that they didn't want to do.
So generous to have these colleagues in these networks.
I was surprised. I was really amazed and very, very grateful.
And no doubt you probably paid it forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And that's really important too. So just always sort of being aware of the people that have worked for you and try and give them opportunities down the track as well.
What's the hardest leadership lesson you've had to learn?
Oh gosh, leadership lesson. You know what? It's actually letting go and letting letting other people in the practice own the projects as well, and letting them in to have a go. So I used to be a lot more micromanaging and controlling early on, and would sort of really control the design. But now we do really throw it out to other people in the business. I'll sort of have the first sketches, which are fairly pragmatic. They're not sort of really, it's not fully designed then, but it's once we sort of move into 3D, I'll have an idea, which normally once we start putting it up really doesn't work very well, and someone else will have a crack. So we do sort of mix it up, and then if it doesn't work with that person, then we'll put it over to someone else. So everyone is involved in the preliminary design, which is really good fun.
It's very collaborative.
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest leadership lesson, is allow everyone to own the project.
Without that, growth wouldn't be possible really in the business, would it?
That's right. And it frees things up, and it brings in new ideas. And I haven't been to uni for 35 years, so it's interesting to see what sort of the younger students and architects have learnt, and who they're aware of that I'm not aware of. And then I like to sort of teach them about a few people who were like heroes in my day that they have no idea about, which is pretty funny. So yeah, but also that importance of bringing art into it as well. So we do look at a lot of art in those sort of early sort of design phases as well.
For precedent inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. So for more abstract inspiration.
Do you have a set of ideas that seem to keep coming back up for you? I would say your work is largely all quite varied.
Yes.
It's not terribly stylized in one particular work, but there seems to be a slight echo.
There is a language developing. We talk about the triangles versus the curves, but it is very much about each project, and I talk about that quite a lot, about building the stories about the place and the people, and the history of the site and the future of the site. So there is definitely not one style, and the first concept sketches are all planned, and I haven't even thought about what it's going to look like yet, and that really doesn't happen for 2 or 3 months until we're into the project.
There's a real blessing and privilege, I think, of architecture, because you're creating something for the future.
Yeah.
In the present moment with respect to the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, what we do is a very slow process. So, and that's hard for a lot of people to understand, that it does take time, and allowing it to take time allows you to sort of research into the past and also think about the future. And I think you need a bit of space. Like I always my best ideas come probably when I'm not in the office, and it's when I'm giving myself a bit of space, to think about all those things coming together.
Generally across the industry, in order to have that luxury of time, right, most firms need the luxury of fees.
Yes.
And enough fees. And that comes from being able to advocate for the value of good design and the value of their work. What are some tips and advice for us, your colleagues, the broader industry at large, and in general for creatives? Do you have a method of that advocacy for value that you find has worked?
Yes, and again, it's sort of a fashion reference that I talk about with clients. There's fees. Architects charge fees at all different price points, and beyond that, there's other professionals that also design houses that are not architects that can charge significantly less, but they offer a lot less service and a lot less detail. And I talk about it in the way you would get a tailor-made suit. You can get an off-the-rack suit for $200 down the street, that's sort of a fast fashion, or you can get a bespoke, highly tailored, Giorgio Armani suit. They're both suits, but one is a lifetime suit that is tailored for you, designed for you. You will never throw that 10 times as long. So it's the same idea. We're tailoring, a building to people. So, and the more detail you put into it, the more certainty you want during the construction process, less chaos and less stress, but also much greater longevity, because the house will be tailored for those people and be designed to adapt to their long-term lives.
Are you having to have conversations with prospective clients at this level of detail, or do your systems already qualify them at some level to be receptive?
No, I definitely,
bespoke?
I take potential clients through a project and show them what they will get, and I'll take them through from first sketch through to delivery on site, so that they can see, oh my gosh, she produces 245 drawings for our house. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so then they understand the value of it. But we're thinking about every single corner of that building and assessing every single element in that building, so that everything's decided before we even start, hopefully on site. There is a few decisions that I highlight we haven't decided until we get on site. And the fact that we're there on site all the time as well, and I'm on site all the time.
So you're actually effectively converting that to data.
Yeah, that's right.
You're saying these are your sheets. This is a typical project.
Yeah.
This is the level. Point. This is the level of service you're receiving.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So they can see it rather than just showing them pretty pictures of the finished product. They have to understand the process
And what goes into it.
Yeah, and what they're getting into as well. So
a lot of architects will say they'll ask the client the question, "Who else have you gone to see? And if not, why not? Like, how are you sure that we're the ones you want to work with?" Comes back to that point that you made earlier about relationships.
Yeah. I mean, I think pretty early on. For instance, I had an interview last week with potential clients, and they were very kind of nervous and standoffish at the beginning. And normally the interviews will last about an hour. We ended up sitting there for 3 hours talking about art and, what was in the last Venice Biennale. And we sort of went right off topic, and then we went, oh, we better go have a look at the site. So drove down to the site and had a look at that. But we had just such a wonderful conversation, and they were really, really engaged and really interesting people. And
so you liked each other, tick.
We liked each other, and then we realised we better actually bring this back and go have a look at the site and talk a little bit more about architecture. But that was really important.
Do you charge for those initial consultations?
No.
Why not?
Well, because I mean, it's sort of interesting meeting the people, and I just don't see why I would. I don't know. I know some architects too, but I think that's just part of the process. I mean, build it into your fee later. That's fine.
And most of those projects, because they're already so qualified, they're coming to you because they know the work. They're mostly all come online.
Yeah, most of them do. But I mean, there's certainly sometimes, and particularly at the moment, where it's highly competitive, where you're up against sort of 4 or 5 other architects, and you know who they are. But that's part of the process. But I certainly, and usually the first meetings are in my office, so I certainly wouldn't charge for that. And but sometimes you need to go out and have a look at the place first, and that's my decision.
It's all part of that process, all part of that onboarding, and everyone works differently too.
That's right. And it's a bit like, a lot of my clients actually are barristers. I do a lot of barristers' chambers on as well as houses. And, they talk about it too. It's like, well, everyone thinks we charge for every single minute that we do, but we don't. So, that's how it goes. You just build that into your total fee structure.
Later on. What does good design mean to you?
Good design means something that's tailored to the project, place or people, and it has longevity and considers in terms of, I'm talking about design as a whole, whether it's a building, a piece of clothing, a piece of jewellery or whatever. So longevity, tailored to people, place, and strong sense of materiality.
Back to those honest materials. That first lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
From Daryl.
Yeah, for sure.
And even there's this, I worked in an office once, there was a big piece of contemporary art where there was a sign out the front of a typical interwar period Australian home that said, "Are your materials honest?"
Oh, it's true. It is true. You want to express the materiality of the thing. I have the same sort of concern for a lot of the fake looking stuff that's out there at the moment. And I don't understand why. But some clients love it, and every now and again you got to compromise, and they really, really want it. And you go, fine, you can have it, but you know.
Do you have some favourite materials or anything you're really keen to use? Like, are you interested in exploring hempcrete? Is that coming up?
Oh, hempcrete's definitely coming up. I haven't used it yet. But a friend of mine is building a house in it with another architect. But it's a really interesting process. My favourite material would definitely be timber. We use a lot of timber, whether it's, and particularly, ideally, Australian timbers and ideally Victorians. However, that's getting harder and harder, which is an interesting challenge, and one that I'm particularly passionate about fighting for, because I think there is a sustainable way of harvesting local timbers, and not because what the government's doing at the moment by limiting access to local Victorian timbers means that we're more and more timbers are being sourced from overseas, which is concerning to me. I think there's a sustainable way of doing this. And my father was he was a scientist, agricultural scientist who was in forestry for a very long time. So I grew up around trees, and Dad's experiments in the bush, measuring trees and learning all about the different sort of eucalypts and all that sort of stuff. So I'm pretty passionate about it and very aware of forestry and plantation timbers. And in fact, my whole architectural thesis was on an area called Nelson on the border of South Australia and Victoria, and sort of looked at the impact of plantation timbers adjacent to sort of native forests. So yeah, I'm pretty passionate about it. And I think understanding forestry but then also celebrating the beauty of timber is, we can find a way to sort of use this timber and celebrate it. So, yeah.
I'm really curious, what is that opportunity gap? How, if you're able to, in shorter form, explain to us and listeners, how do we get to that sustainable use of the local timbers, and what are they saying that we can't do?
Well, I think the concern is sort of the way it's harvested, just to put it fairly simply, and allowing sort of everything around it to still exist, and not just sort of clean out or sort of haze out an entire sort of forest. And
so it's not having monoculture.
Correct, yeah. So being really, you have to be really delicate about it and fairly strategic. I'm certainly not an agricultural scientist, but and if my father was still alive, he would tell us how to do it. But there's plenty of people out there doing, that are also fighting for it in the forestry industry. So I will leave it more. I will defer to them to talk sort of in a more technical manner about it. But just banning it is a ridiculous political response.
Have you experimented with CLT and glulam timbers? Because I was really shocked to hear that that's also become a contentious issue in the sustainability space.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
About whether or not it was really possibly a sustainable product.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have a house. We started in 2009. It's called the CLT house. So it's, again, one of our sort of pretty well-known ones. And it was for a builder. He's a large commercial builder. We started in 2009 before CLT was even in Australia. And we were dealing with engineers overseas. And it took us actually 10 years to build the house. But by that time, CLT was in the country, and so we were really using it. The house was really a sort of a test site for him to experiment with what CLT could do on larger commercial projects. So we were just playing around with what we could do with it. So it was a really interesting process especially over that 10 years, and seeing how CLT developed around the world as a product. I think it's got great opportunities, especially if we can manufacture more of it here. We already use it. We use a lot of glulam. We've used it in interiors. We've used it structurally. It's a great product, and I definitely think they both have great opportunities. Yeah, for sure. But it's more when you have to import a lot of CLT. Is that sustainable? Probably not. But the stuff that's being produced overseas in birch and things like that is a lot more attractive to be left exposed.
Yes.
That's the issue.
Such a large challenge, right, across this material space
Yeah.
that we just don't manufacture
Yeah.
locally in Australia.
That's
We
right.
could, but
Yeah.
we're not doing it.
No.
We could, but we seem to not want to.
Yeah, and also the CLT that's produced is out of radiata pine, which is, again, I mean, that's sort of a monoculture, plantation forest
Yes.
product. So there's a whole lot of sustainability issues with that as well.
I'm hoping that in amongst, this advocacy and push towards solving the housing crisis and building more housing, that we can also support R&D and investment in manufacturing
Yeah,
and development in parallel.
yeah, for sure.
Right, when we had the early housing boom across the 20th century, when everything was being built out of brick, we also had a lot of brick, and we were making a lot of brick.
Yeah,
As an example.
yeah.
I'd love to see that material come back.
Brick.
Or brick or any other material with an industry associated, so we're not, say, digging up Australian iron ore to ship it overseas to buy back foreign steel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And pouring water in the ground to do that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the brick, actually, you're talking about, the brick sort of during that interwar period was a really interesting industry. And there was the clinker brick. So there was a whole lot of houses sort of in the eastern suburbs and that were built for sort of homecoming soldiers, excuse me. And the clinker brick was really the reject brick. So it was the burnt brick, the one that didn't really come out quite right. And we did this house all made out of, that was an old clinker brick house that the client hated. And she hated the bricks and wanted to get rid of the bricks. And we then went away and did the concept design and came back and went, we're keeping all the bricks and we're getting more clinker bricks and doing all the extension out of clinker bricks. And I thought, we're either going to be fine or she's going to sack us, one way or the other.
What happened?
We were fine. We were good.
How did you get that argument across the line, especially when there's such passion against a material and it's their house?
Well, that's it. I think they hadn't seen the beauty of it. And then when we sort of reshaped the house and added new extensions and showed what you could do with this clinker brick and the history of the brick and how it was the rejected one and showed how it can become the beautiful one, then she loved the brick.
It was about the story.
Absolutely.
The story
She
sold
didn't
it.
understand the brick. And she didn't, and like a lot of people, and this was sort of in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and there's a lot of sort of, big metricon sort of homes all around it. So all of these...
Ghastly McMansions.
Yeah, all these beautiful little clinker brick homes were being knocked down for these big McMansions. And I said, we've got to keep this. This is a part of history. I agree, and there are some... fantastic brick manufacturers in Australia, but they're...
Find the bricks made for the Melbourne 1956 Olympics.
Oh.
That are stamped as the Olympic brick with the Olympic rings and the date.
Cool.
You can find them on Facebook even. They're so common that they were so common at one point.
Really?
That at the time of that year of production, they were all big stamped.
I have not heard that story. I'm going to get one.
Get one at least for the office.
Yep.
for the trophy cabinet.
Yep.
Looking ahead, of course, sustainability is just one of our biggest topics at the moment, as is housing. Do you have any gut instincts, any sort of feelers or solutions? Even though I don't think it's in any way fair for architects to have to solve it all, but we definitely get blamed for it all, don't we? So.
Yeah, no, we do. And I think, you keep it simple. It's little steps and, one ripple can create a wave. So when you're designing a house, for instance, design to consider solar access, natural ventilation, to try and minimise the use of, lighting, mechanical ventilation and so on. These are really simple things. Insulating well, using local products as much as possible to minimise the sort of carbon footprint, and thinking about the relationship with landscape, and also using landscape to help cool and shade the house is something that people don't think of enough. And I'm just sort of looking out the window now, looking at houses that are running right up to their boundaries. Give yourself a bit of space for a bit of garden is really going to cool down your house.
It doesn't have to be that big.
It doesn't need to be that big. And I often send my clients on the Boyd tours from the Boyd Foundation, where you go around to the Robin Boyd houses one of our greatest architects who designed some of the most incredible houses, they are not big houses. The rooms are not big. The rooms have just got out of control. And half the reason I think the living room has become so big is because the TVs have become so big. So you then need more space to get back from these giant TVs. It's hilarious. So, yeah.
It's also become the everything room, and without coordinating it. So I think it's probably the TVs, it's the PlayStations, it's this gadget, it's the toys. It's everything that we're living with instead of maybe just the glass of wine and the book.
Well, it's what's interesting. More and more clients now are saying they don't have a TV anymore. So people are moving away from the TV altogether. So that's fantastic, I think.
I'm so excited about that. It's not a trend. It's going to be permanent.
It is going to be permanent.
I'm so on board with this.
So, yeah, I think soon, you just won't... It's probably 50-50 now.
Are you doing projectors or drop-down screens or anything like that?
We are doing projectors in some. So that would be more for, and again, for maybe movies and things like that. But even that, so I think there's less and less need for the TVs or the big screens in houses anymore. The home cinema hopefully will die a very fast death, actually.
You heard it here first on Radio Architecture, listeners. Well, we do architecture, acoustics, and audio, so I don't hope it goes completely. But perhaps it doesn't need to be in every house.
Well, we can have music.
That's true.
That's true.
Listening spaces, listening rooms, listening bars.
Oh, just having music everywhere with great sound.
With great zoning.
Oh, yeah.
Is really, really indeed a big frontier at the moment. How are you protecting your practice that is so based on art and craft and relationships and collaboration, right? All these really earnest, human, tactile things against the invasion of AI?
We're using AI.
Oh, it's in.
Oh, yeah. I sort of go, you can't beat it. Use it.
Be like your career trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I started in architecture, in design, like in interior design, I was sort of one of the early adopters of CAD and 3D modelling. And back in the day when I was at uni, the lecturers refused to even come into the computer lab because they said, well, using computers is not design. Well, 5 years later, every single practice had, CAD and 3D modelling in their offices, and the drawing boards were out. So to me, this is the next phase. So I am an early adopter, and I'm also very positive about it. I think it's got great opportunities to make architecture more accessible, more approachable, and maybe a bit cheaper.
How are you using it? Is it doing the mundane things? Is it acting like a tool, or is it already part of your design process?
There's a couple of things we're doing. Actually, I'm building completely separate to my business a startup in building compliance, because one of the biggest issues at the moment is getting a building permit is getting really, really hard. And we're experts, and we've done this for a long time, and everyone knows getting a building permit is a major challenge now. So with the amount of performance solutions you have to do, which are these big expensive reports that cost our clients lots of money and lots of time, when you're doing anything bespoke that's not sort of very standard in the building code. So I'm sort of tackling that and building a business, building performance solution reports and things like that. And we're also sort of using AI to sort of analyse compliance issues in our drawings and in our designs. So we're tackling it from that perspective.
From the startup, you're basically testing it on yourself. You're the beta client.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because I want to make it easier for everyone out there to, sort of analyse and be able to navigate this building permit process. So the bureaucracy was really killing me, and I went, right, there's got to be an easy way. But we're also playing with it from a design perspective as well and seeing what it can do, but also in the day-to-day sort of administration in the office and things like that. There's some great opportunities. So if you can make it all faster, easier, cheaper, I know a lot of architects are really scared about that, but that just means, well, doesn't that mean more people can then use architects, ideally? I think that's a great thing.
That's true.
So it becomes less elitist and more approachable and more affordable.
Though I do feel there are so many architects out there that are offering fixed fees or lower fees, or offering consultancy-based services and workshop-based services that are very accessible to people.
Yeah.
I think our gap is perhaps in the knowledge
Yes.
that only 5% of houses in Australia are designed by architects.
Yes.
And so there's so many people that could at least be coming in for a consultation or a floor plan review,
Yeah.
or getting some input in
Yeah.
to progress their project and get a better design outcome.
Yeah.
And perhaps don't even know these architects exist.
Yeah.
And there's so many of us that are offering that consulting service.
Yeah. I also think that, you look at a lot of Scandinavian countries or European countries where, architecture is just part of every house that is built, and it's sort of
Expected.
It's expected and part of the sort of the permit process. We need to sort of get to that point so that it becomes less elitist and, less exclusive. I think that would be a fantastic thing.
Perhaps we need to tighten what kind of buildings and what scale of building can be built without an architect.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well, and totally restrict that. But really, from what I've gleaned, is it's largely the financial mechanisms and some of those financial levers that become the barrier.
Yeah.
Because the banks only want to lend to certain types of projects on certain types of contracts.
Yeah. Well, that's another issue altogether, isn't it? Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's very narrow-minded.
We get to that classic minefield of procurement, and I'm wondering if in your practice, are you doing more ECIs, early contractor involvement lately, or is it still the classic to go through the process and then head out to tender?
I've never done that.
Never done that?
No. So it's always been negotiated tender with builders from sort of midway through the design process. So I think I've done one tender and don't think it was a great outcome, to be frank.
Right.
So, yeah, we always get the builders in sort of pretty much straight after town planning. As we're developing up the interiors and doing some preliminary structurals, we'll talk to a few builders there and decide which one we're going with. And then we work through all the contract documentation for construction with the builder and their sort of pricing as we draw, so that we can ask them lots of questions. If we need to find savings, we can collaborate with the trades. It's
much more efficient process.
It's a much more collaborative process, and it develops that love triangle that I was talking about.
Yes.
It really does. Like, everyone starts respecting each other, and when the builder and their trades can see that we're responding and listening to them and getting their advice on things, they come on board and take ownership of things as well. So,
and do you find in those 200 and something drawings you're doing, they're all necessary, they become much more efficient? You're not drawing something that the builder that you don't need to just for the sake of making sure it's in the contract package.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're actually drawing what the builder needs to draw.
That's right. We're drawing what the builder needs to build.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're drawing what has to be done, but because the buildings are so, they are very detailed and they're very bespoke. So, it's not like we can repeat details from one project to the other. I should really do that. I might make more money. But we don't. We just, we love what we do and sort of tailoring it to every client.
And that's the care and the craft that goes into bespoke architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of look at it again a bit like the slow food movement. There's a lot of fast food out there, but then there is the slow food movement that really looks at sort of local growers and local farmers and really, using old crafts and old techniques and really taking your time to produce something of high quality. That's what we are doing as well. But at the same time, I do understand the opportunities that technology can bring to us as well through construction, but also potentially through design and AI.
It's going to be really interesting to see where that pull goes into the future. And to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And if we go too far in the AI space, will there be a reaction to the point of everyone's ripping out their televisions?
Yeah.
We're seeing either they're covered by joinery, covered by cupboards, or there's simply no TVs in homes anymore. So I'm wondering if we're going to see that pattern in tech back in the other direction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The tech is becoming more and more invisible. Like 10 years ago, it was all about showing off that tech. And now the houses, you don't want to see any of that technology anymore. And it's more embedded, so you don't have to see it anymore. So that's interesting.
What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to yourself, your younger self as a practitioner?
That's a hard question, off the cuff. I would probably say just be a bit more, just be empathetic to not only to the clients, to the client and also to your staff, for sure. So, just be kind and empathetic. And less sort of, driven about every project has to be an absolute masterpiece.
They really do train us in architecture school that way.
Yeah, they do, for sure.
But then when the body of work builds up, then that's kind of the joy and the pleasure that you get now and in this stage of growth of your practice.
Yeah.
To be working interstate and working internationally.
Yeah.
Now as well, that you can come into a rhythm about it. What are you most excited for with those projects that are upcoming?
What have we got? We've got a really exciting house that we've just finished recently that I'm just sitting there waiting for the garden to grow, which is really painful.
So you can photograph it.
So I can photograph it. That's the thing that people don't understand. Sometimes you have to wait a couple of years till you can actually photograph something.
You don't Photoshop it the same image?
No. Because, juries come out and have a look at the place, so, you don't want to fake it up. So that's next level house. It's super interesting. It's a big house, admittedly, which, goes against a lot of concerns that a lot of architects have at the moment about big houses, but it's also quite a sustainable house too. It's like, well, how do you do these? People are going to keep building big houses if they can afford to.
Yeah.
How do you do it so it is sort of efficient and that all the spaces are used and it's also sustainable? And we had all those conversations and we've put everything into that house that we could to make it as sustainable as possible. So that's a really exciting project. And then we've got some really fun projects interstate. And we've just done a fabulous interiors project with another architect up in Byron Bay. So that was really wonderful to sort of just take on an interiors role. And I love doing that with other architects, which people don't realise that I still do that sort of and sort of design things, design interiors for other architects. So that's really interesting. And we've done a beautiful, tiny little one-bedroom schoolhouse project just outside of Trentham, which was a really incredible project, all Heritage Vic listed, so really complex heritage process where we had to document every single weatherboard that came off and put back on again, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
And that was for a writer. So what was a schoolhouse has now become his writing studio / one-bedroom house.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's really beautiful.
Well, that's sustainability, isn't it? That love and care that goes into it.
Oh, yeah. So really diverse projects from very kind of big projects. And still, we are always doing these really interesting barristers' chambers, which we haven't really talked about, but they're super fun. So they're like a one-room office, and we design this office for this, one particular barrister. And we've done quite a few of them now, and every time they have to be different and responding to that one barrister. And they're all so diverse.
And their personality and that individual, it's almost like a microcosm of a whole-scale project of that intensity.
Whereas, yeah.
I'm mindful of the time, so we'll ask my last question.
Mm.
And that is, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? I think the next generation actually does give me hope. Like my daughter, who's now 21, I think they're incredibly savvy. They're exposed to a lot of, challenges. But I think they'll rise to it as well, and they'll teach us quite a few things along the way. And they'll have this, technology such as AI that they will mould and shape and hopefully, be able to provide some new and exciting solutions to the problems of today.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, Fiona.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks for joining me for another evening of radio architecture with Ilana Razbash. This live show was broadcast and recorded in the Radio Karim studio on Bunurong Country. You can replay the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and supporting community radio. Take care.
Hi, I'm Angus Montaigne, all the way from Scotland to the main Straits of Fitzroy, and you are listening to Radio Karim.
Hey, ST.
Yes,
If
mate.
you had a business, who would you use for your systems integration?
Look, I was thinking about this earlier on in the week, and I'd done a fair bit of homework on it, but the name that kept coming up was DB Results.
And GS, if you needed someone to improve your digital business transformation, who would you use?
Oh, without a doubt, I'd go straight to DB Results.
AC, digital solutions, you've got to improve it in your business. Who'd you go to?
Got to be DB Results, AA.
I tell you, DB Results, the right digital solutions for your business.
When the going gets tough.
Going gets tough.
When the going gets tough.
DB Results.
When the going gets tough.
DB